Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining today's Redington virtual sessions. The topic for today's session is VMware Path to Digital Enterprise. The session will be presented by Mr. Sriram. During the session, if you have any questions, we request you to please put them in the Q&A tab on the left-hand side, and they will be answered at the end of the session. Sriram, over to you. Thank you.
When we were choosing the title for this webinar, I was looking at some of the capabilities of VeloCloud SD-WAN, and I wanted to pick something that is very relevant to the problems that we solve for our customers. And that's the reason why we ended up with Path to Digital Enterprise. So having said that, I want to define what we mean by digital enterprise, because just like a lot of things, it could mean different things to different people. And even when you look at explanations for this, that can vary, right? So we want to start there. We want to look at what digital enterprise really means, right? So according to analysts at KPMG, PwC, and Gartner, according to them, the vision or goal of a modern enterprise has been shifting from investing in IT as a means to support their revenue streams to sort of a profit center. They want to have enterprises that have IT infrastructure that really enables them to gain a competitive advantage. For example, one of the customers that we have for VeloCloud in the region is MAF, Majid Al Futtaim Retail, Carrefour, right? So if you look at Carrefour, they have utilized the IT infrastructure to enable so many additional services that brings a lot of value to the customers, and also for the business itself. For example, it could be their loyalty app that you use every time you purchase, that gives them an enormous amount of information in terms of what customers need to buy, and what they need to stock in terms of inventory. So businesses want to gain that competitive advantage through technology, and that is what we see today. And CIOs are increasingly focusing on projects that directly assist them to either make the business successful, or to gain a huge foothold over the market by using these technologies. And today, one thing that we want to look at is how we can achieve this, digital enterprise. Now, when we look at gaining competitive advantage, and when we have all these high-level words that are being thrown around when we talk about IT, one thing that we need to see is that across all the technology spectrum that we utilize in IT today, they all need to be modern. They all need to support this ability of digital enterprise. So if we were to look at the different components that we have today, if we take a typical data center, on-prem data center, we have compute, which has been virtualized, it has been modernized. There's a lot of innovation that is happening when it comes to compute. If you look at storage, similar technological advances have happened. We have a lot of virtualization happening. We have the software-defined data center that sort of encompasses this whole concept of everything that is in our data center. Even in networks, we have network virtualization, we have SDN, which again brings this whole DC infrastructure, or our LAN infrastructure, into the modern era. But what happens when the traffic actually leaves our premises, the premises that we control, right? So the moment it leaves our DC and branch locations, or the different locations the customer may have, the moment it leaves, we absolutely have no modernization. For example, some of the technologies that we use today in WAN, from a service provider perspective, are technologies that have existed for a long time. These are not new. For example, MPLS connectivity has existed for 20 plus years. So when we look at how we are bringing all of these locations together, business locations together, now that is where SD-WAN plays a huge role, right? So let me put this in perspective. Uh, let's say that we have a customer with, say, 5 sites, and in today's terms, what it would really look like if there is no modernization done is that these 5 sites will be connected to each other using either MPLS for business critical applications. So that is one HQ and 4 sites. So that's 4 MPLS lines. And on top of that, there will be a firewall at the network edge of all these, or perimeter firewall, and there will be a backup IPsec link of some sort if the MPLS fails, for traffic to go from the branches or the different locations to the DC. And most of the workloads will run on DC and is delivered to the branches, which is fine. And there is an architecture that has worked well for a long time. Now, let's say that if the customer wants to add 2 more locations, and in fact, this is happening to a couple of customers that we are talking to right now in the region. When they had to bring up 2 additional locations, how do we enable connectivity to those 2 locations? Well, we have to get additional MPLS links, which is fine. But the thing about MPLS is that it's not only expensive. Private circuits are not only expensive, it is also time consuming to set up, and there's a contract period that we had to subscribe it to, right? So what happens if these locations are not in the same country? Or what if these locations are in a different service provider's purview? What if we have to talk to a different service provider in a different country to set this up? So that complicates things to begin with. Send traffic through these expensive MPLS line to the DC, and then the DC is going to carry that all the way to the cloud. And I believe AWS uses Direct Connect. I'm not 100% sure what Microsoft calls it, but looking at MPLS or additional bandwidth between the DC and the other locations. But what's even more traditional workarounds available today to address this challenge. And I think I have mentioned about 4 or 5 challenges, that that can easily derail this path to the digital enterprise, just because of the fact that the modernization of WAN hasn't happened due to many factors. So that is what we are going to look at today, and we are going to be looking at how we can enable digital transformation, how we can get our customers connected across multiple locations using VeloCloud SD-WAN. So some of these drivers, or some of the areas of investment that enterprises are making in order to gain this advantage when it comes to their businesses. One, obviously, cloud is growing. For the foreseeable future, we will see a huge investment in cloud. That's one. There's the contents that were being shared before. The medium of that content has changed. Video traffic has grown exponentially in the last few years, and it will continue to do so. UC, so like I mentioned, especially during these hard times that we see because of COVID, we saw an exponential increase in collaboration tools usage. We have again Microsoft or Zoom, and investment in these areas for enterprises are growing as well. IoT is starting to mature as a technology, and we are starting to see some real life applications of IoT in scale now becoming the norm for a lot of enterprises. Wireless is also another area that is on the rise. So we want to look at how VeloCloud can get customers to the point where they are able to support all these drivers. They are able to enable these drivers for their own businesses. So I want to talk a little bit, before I go into the technology itself, I want to talk a little bit about the Gartner Magic Quadrant for WAN Edge infrastructure, the SD-WAN. So 2018 was the first time that we started seeing Gartner look at SD-WAN as a serious technology platform that enables enterprises to move forward. So if you see in 2018, there were three major players in SD-WAN when it comes to feature-rich as well as ability to execute as well. So we had Silver Peak, Cisco, and VMware. VMware is VeloCloud through the acquisition of VeloCloud. Now, if you see the other players here, all the other vendors that's mentioned here, which is not in the leaders quadrant, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about why they are not in the leaders quadrant. And it is by no means a reflection of these technologies that they're putting out. The reason why they're not in the leaders quadrant is because their architecture is slightly different. It's based on another technology, but the problem with that is that it doesn't scale. Let me explain. Let me explain in a bit more detail of what this means. So I mentioned earlier that we need to have connectivity between SaaS workloads and all the customer locations. Now, the way we can achieve this, the only way we can achieve this, is by having gateways close to the SaaS workloads and bringing all the customer sites directly on the overlay, which means that we need to have our gateways maintained close to locations that customers don't have access to. So one of the things that VeloCloud has done, and done quite well, is to have their gateways placed both in terms of the ISP points of presence, as well as very close to the data centers the SaaS providers have. So we cover most of the SaaS providers with VeloCloud gateways, which means that when we have a customer who has a location that is that is geographically diverse, all of those locations will have a path towards or very close to these SaaS data centers, and thereby we can optimize the traffic. And the same thing goes for Cisco and Silver Peak as well, to be honest. And Cisco again is in the picture because of the Viptela acquisition, of course. Um, and this is the reason why the other vendors do not move forward in terms of the completeness of vision. It's because of this in 2018 that you have all these firewall-based SD-WAN vendors like Fortinet, Juniper. Cisco Meraki also falls in that category to some extent, and it's this limitation that they have because it's all based on the firewall architecture. And the thing about firewall architecture is that the major issue with the firewall architecture is that it is based on flows, and I will explain that in a bit more detail, shortly in one of the future slides as well. So from that that happened in 2018, and we look at 2019, end of 2019. Now we have two leaders, VeloCloud, which is VMware, and Silver Peak. And if you see, VMware is placed above and furthest than any other vendor. And the reason for this is because in the last year or so, since 2018, VeloCloud has made a lot of additions to its feature set. There is new capabilities that are being introduced to the system, and this is happening on a 3-month cycle, and it has been happening for quite a long time now, for about 18 months now. And all these new features are required to help the customers cope with the changing dynamics of the changing landscape of WAN connectivity. So in summary of this slide, one thing that I want to point out is that VeloCloud is a very mature and widely accepted technology platform when it comes to SD-WAN. We have a lot of customers across the world, and even here locally, who are looking at who either already have or are looking at SD-WAN as a possible solution to the challenges of the WAN as well. And please let me know later. Once I share my contact, if you need references, please let me know, and I'm more than happy to share that with you. So now coming to the VeloCloud SD-WAN solution itself, right? So what does it really look like in terms of its components? One of the things I really like about VeloCloud is the fact that it is very simple and straightforward in terms of its components. So just like any software-defined architecture, it has a controller or an orchestrator in this case, and that orchestrator is responsible for everything that is related to management and maintenance of all the components, all the rest of the components. That's the only way we can is the fact that like a true software-defined architecture, there is a very clear separation of control plane and data plane when it comes to VeloCloud. What it means is that none of the actual customer traffic will ever go to the orchestrator. The only messages or the only traffic the orchestrator will have is between the edge devices and the gateways, and they're all control plane messages. There is no traffic, no actual traffic that ever goes to the orchestrator. That's one. Apart from that, as you can see here on the right side, we have the data center. On the left, we have the branch. And imagine, the earlier example that I mentioned, if the customer has 5 locations, 1 DC and 4 branches, what we will do is that we will and then turn on this service, which is also an edge. When it comes to SaaS, we have gateways, which is transparent. For example, what I mean is that customers don't pay specifically for gateways. So employees' edge devices, they will all form a relationship with the gateways. The gateways actually just perform what the name has. In terms of the existing connectivity that the customer has, there is no change required. For example, if whether it's MPLS or it's lease lines or ADSL or any other form of broadband, or it could be LTE or 3G or today's buzzword 5G, whatever the link or whatever the mechanism that we have to have bandwidth at these locations, all of those can be used, and we can terminate all of these on the VeloCloud device itself, or again go place these devices around the existing infrastructure without changing a lot of things in the existing setup. Let me pause right here to see if there are any questions. Mohammed says my voice is breaking. Is it still breaking? I hope not. Okay. So with the existing bandwidth that we have, what the edge devices will do is that they will aggregate the existing bandwidth, and with all these locations, we'll create an overlay with the help of the gateways, and that is how traffic is routed. So it utilizes the existing infrastructure, and the underlying medium or the type of links that we use doesn't matter anymore. Excuse me. It doesn't matter anymore. And one key difference here when it comes to VeloCloud, as opposed to other SD-WAN vendors, is that you will notice that we are no longer talking about failovers. There is, if we utilize multiple links, we don't depend on failovers because we utilize all the links available according to the control that we want to place from the customer's perspective. So what it really means is that we could just see all of this as bandwidth. So when one of the key value propositions of VeloCloud is also that we can reduce the dependency on MPLS. We can still have MPLS, but we could reduce the dependency on MPLS by having more bandwidth via cheaper broadband connections and moving away from expensive circuits. And we can bundle all of this together. We can bundle all that bandwidth together because we'll utilize all the links at the same time. I will explain this in a little more detail in one of the slides coming up. There are 8 key features, I think, that highlight what SD-WAN, VeloCloud SD-WAN can do. So the first one, again, one of the major features of VeloCloud is the fact that we no longer talk about how the links are performing. We are talking about application traffic. So what we are going to do is that we are going to look at which application is generating the traffic, and then we are going to prioritize them according to the SLAs that are defined, that we define. And majority of these applications, the devices already know, and they can identify these applications based on the traffic. More than 3,800 applications we can identify today, and it will prioritize that traffic to reach the destination by various means and using all the links available from the source to the destination. When it comes to WAN, the second point is about PCI compliance. When it comes to WAN, we need to make sure that if we have different segments of traffic, they need to follow the PCI standards, PCI DSS standards. So we can turn that on. It's a license that we need to add to and also differentiate the sensitive traffic, differentiate the critical traffic, and make sure that it complies with the PCI DSS standards. Service insertions, we can take any, if not all, most of the cloud service providers, especially when it comes to security, like Zscaler, for example, or CloudGuard Edge by Checkpoint. We can take these services and then we can integrate that with the WAN. And I think this is a really interesting feature, especially the kind of services that VeloCloud already integrates with. I think it reduces a lot of overhead for network and security teams to implement on a real-time basis as well. So one of the features that we have added in the last year is the level of analytics that the orchestrator or the whole the solution does. We can have visibility into the kind of application that utilizes the bandwidth. We can also look at the quality of the service that we are receiving from the service providers. We can monitor the links and identify faulty links and the duration for which they were faulty and duration for which they were deteriorating and not meeting SLAs. We can identify all that, and we can view this from a single pane of glass with the orchestrator, the same place that we manage the whole solution. We can also prioritize SaaS traffic, and I think the SaaS traffic is such an important aspect of the modern enterprise, and it is going to be likely that way for a long time to come. And the need for prioritizing this traffic is because this provides an additional choice for the customers to look at different options. Like I mentioned, some of these SaaS services that we see today, they could be very critical to business, and the fault tolerance on some of those applications could be very low. So in many cases, those applications will in turn need to be hosted on-prem in the past. Now we have an opportunity to deliver those as SaaS, and customers can utilize that without having to make huge investments in terms of connectivity, and also gain an enormous amount of control in terms of how that traffic is delivered. Another thing that we can do is also segment the traffic, and the traffic segmentation is becoming more and more prevalent in today's enterprise, especially on the WAN side. For example, if we have a different set of traffic going from one location to the other, and I think the best example for this would be, let's say, if we have a bank which has an HQ, and it has some public-facing services that are not related to the core business, and if that is being delivered from the cloud, and some of the other information that's being delivered from on-prem in the DC in the HQ. Now, in that scenario, one of the things that we can do is to easily segment this traffic into two, and make sure that there is no interaction between these two different traffic streams, and send it to its location. So we don't actually have to send all the traffic back to the DC, which means that there's no more backhaul. And when it comes to cloud traffic, it just directly goes to cloud, or if it is SaaS, it just goes to the SaaS locations directly. So the secret sauce behind the VeloCloud SD-WAN is the DMPO, and the DMPO is what makes it possible to achieve all these great features that we talk about. So like I mentioned before, with VeloCloud, what we are doing is that we are combining multiple links together. So there is no failover here. We just continuously monitor each location. And if you see here, if you see the large gray box, the internet connection too. So that's the continuous link monitoring, and it says that we have some latency, we have some jitter, and there's a lot of packet loss. So having this information at the edge location, what the device will do then is that it will try to steer the traffic on the better links. So we have two links, and both of them having some issues in varying one packet across one link, and the rest of the packets, when it starts to deteriorate, immediately through the next links. So by when a packet that is going to be sent across a link is likely to get dropped. And in that case, one of the things it will do is that it will sequence all traffic. For example, this is very important when it comes to UDP, because there is no mechanism built into the protocol, such as voice or video. And what it does is that it will replicate some of the packets when these conditions are there, and then send the same packet across multiple links. And whichever packet arrives at the destination first will be accepted, and subsequent packets, duplicate packets, will be discarded by the VeloCloud Edge device. So sometimes, we may have this question: aren't we flooding the bandwidth here, or aren't we choking the bandwidth here by replicating the packets? The answer is yes, but only sometimes. And this is where the solution is so intelligent that it knows that it has existing thresholds where it will sense whether it is safe to replicate the packets, and when the connectivity is deteriorating beyond there are any questions. If I were to place a device, so we will look at the existing setup and decide, but more often, but if that is not possible, we can support other options as well. Does it have any security services on the device to monitor? I'm sorry about the echo. I'm not sure why it's happening. If one of the WAN connections go down, Will I miss any ping? That's an excellent question, Mohammed. No, you will not miss any ping. No, I think I'm facing some sort of connectivity problem. It's not from your side, Sujesh. Going back to Mohammed's question, yes, it will utilize all WAN links, and if you're doing a ping from branch A to branch B, if one of the WAN connections go down, you will not miss any pings, unless something drastic happens, like unless we are testing it by ripping out all the connections or something like that, it's unlikely that you will miss any pings. And the best part is that and this switching of links, if required, in terms of a complete blackout in terms of connection, um, in that case, this is going to happen sub-second. So likely you may miss maybe one ping that's already been sent, one packet, but uh, I don't think that that is going to affect any of these sessions that we have, whether it's UDP or TCP. I just want to sometime in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And since then, we have been able to replicate this on a few occasions. And which is the icon with the antenna like things coming out of it. So that's the icon. I prefer to show this, now that connectivity is enabled by that cloud gateway, which is represented by two arrows going. Any connectivity, it doesn't matter. We can incorporate all of that and bring the whole enterprise and its workloads and users to the same WAN overlay. And I think this is the key point of VeloCloud, that it doesn't really matter. It has very low amount of restrictions when it comes to the deployment options. And this is also the point that we were highlighting earlier. When it comes to branch to HQ traffic, we are no longer bringing all the traffic back to the HQ. Not required. We save a lot of bandwidth there. And then when it's going to the cloud, it goes directly to the cloud, and so it does to SaaS as well. So we are really optimizing the WAN here in a way that we reduce cost and complexity in terms of the links that we need to maintain, and also in terms of the links that we need to invest in terms of bandwidth. Earlier, we spoke about the services insertion. So this is the cloud security service, a snapshot of some of the vendors that we work with today. There will be more added as and when we see the requirement to do that. So Zscaler is widely used alongside VeloCloud. We have a number of deployments. Same thing with Checkpoint. Checkpoint CloudGuard Edge is very popular when deploying VeloCloud as well, because all of these services are literally turned on by a click of a button. And we just mentioned the IP address of these services, and then the orchestrator will pull the necessary configuration and apply it to the edges automatically. So there is no duplication of effort here. So once the policies are defined in these cloud services, it's literally going to be just implemented across, as the VeloCloud Edge devices are going to act as enforcement points for these policies. So this is how the orchestrator interface looks like. It's one of the cleanest interfaces I've ever seen. It is very intuitive, and everything is very clearly defined. And as you can see, there are not a lot of things that you see there. If you see the left side, when you look at the panel of options that you have available, there's not a lot that you see, because majority of what we need to configure on the VeloCloud are already populated as smart defaults. For example, we already know Office 365 is a critical application for business. So if we need to introduce that, all we have to do is go through the whole template that's already populated and select yes or no, or make slight changes here and there. So I think from a deployment and maintenance perspective, it simplifies the WAN. I think in a way, this is quite unprecedented that we can manage WAN in such a simple fashion, and that's because the orchestrator does majority of the work that it automates most of the functions that we need to do, even when it comes to configuration or maintenance, right? But then once it's deployed, there's an enormous amount of analytics that it does, and you have visibility into very granular visibility into the locations, and as well as as well as the links and the different locations. So in summary, I think we are about on time. In summary, so this is the overall SD-WAN feature set that we spoke about, and the kind of value that it adds. So it prioritizes the applications. We no longer use the word or the phrase QoS, quality of service, or QoS. We speak about quality of experience because does it have any security services on the device to monitor the traffic? It does have. It does not have a stateful firewall, and we are also adding more capabilities to the edge device when it comes to security. Can you explain a bit more on VeloCloud gateways? Definitely. So the gateways are devices that are maintained by VeloCloud directly. and they are placed in near the near ISP points of presence, which essentially means that when you look at an internet connection, you will see the next hop, which is typically a router from the ISP side, and that's the closest, that is the entry point for all those connections that go out in that particular region. So near the customer facing points of an internet service provider, near these POPs, VeloCloud will maintain some gateways. So this is to facilitate the connectivity. This is transparent to the user, which means that we don't, as a user, we will never be configuring these gateways. The gateways are automatically configured via the orchestrator will do that automatically. As well as there are similar gateways placed near, for example, if Microsoft is delivering Office 365 from a particular data center, so we'll have the gateways either placed within or near those data centers, so that we can optimize the SaaS traffic coming out of there. Okay, I think we are at. Okay, I think we are at the 1 hour mark. If there are no more questions, thank you so much for attending the webinar. I will share this presentation with you along with my contact details. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.